Further Review is brought to you by Consumers Beverages, Buffalo's beer store. Visit us online at consumersbeverages.com.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Further Review with Buffalo News. I think I'm Ryan O'Halloran. I think he's Jay Skurski. We had a hellacious travel back from Seattle, which included 5 hours in Detroit this morning. But we're back here in Buffalo, and a convincing 31-10 win for the Bills to move to 6-2. And Jay, for the first topic, sometimes a storyline isn't media driven, it's internally driven, and this was the slow starts by this offense the last couple weeks. Obviously it was a point of emphasis, and they really came out and made an exclamation point against the Seahawks.
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, 290-plus yard drives in the first half will do that, right? That's one way to get going, and and especially to start the game the way they did. And I would expand it, Ryan, to beyond just the offense. I think the defense has started slow at times too. It's been inconsistent. And Greg Rousseau comes out, bats down 2 of the first 3 passes. It's a quick 3 and out. The Bills get the ball back and they go 90 yards for a touchdown. I mean, that is the recipe when you're playing in Seattle. This is only the second game I had covered there. It's as loud as they advertise it to be. And I mean, we're behind glass in the press box. I know you've covered several more games there, but it's a tough place to play. It's a loud place to play. You're inevitably going to deal with weather at times, and they certainly did that yesterday too. So I think getting a lead, being able to play offensively kind of any style that they wanted in terms of James Cook running it really well, Josh Allen doing a nice job throwing the ball, save for one miscue to Amari Cooper. And then defensively, really just shutting down any semblance of a running game for the Seahawks and making Geno Smith have to throw it. And we saw the mistakes that Seattle made in those instances, especially down near the Bills' goal line. So, yeah, a ton of positives to take away from this. I think they did a really good job of getting that early lead and starting fast.
Yeah, and really good balance offensively. You mentioned James Cook; he went over 100 yards again. He just looked like he had holes to several lanes to pick through, and really ran hard and ran over guys and broke tackles. And Keon Coleman, I think he took another step forward with some 2 catches for at least 25 yards. And then I thought it was a very nifty 2-yard touchdown where he sort of caught it with his hand pinned against his shoulder. So that was a positive. They didn't really need Amari Cooper in this game. He was pretty quiet. But one of the guys you talked to after the game was Khalil Shakir. 10 targets, 9 catches, 107 yards. So, okay, not the fastest guy, not the most highly rated guy. Why is he continuing to make plays?
Well, his hands, right? I mean, he catches everything that Josh Allen throws to him. I mean, the amount of receptions on targets is incredible. We know he had the streak earlier this year, an NFL record setting streak. I believe it got up to 30 or so, 30 straight targets with a catch, and he's really just continued that. And the key now is he's healthy. He was banged up. He missed the Houston game with an ankle injury, was limited against the Jets in his return from that. Snap count went up quite a bit last week against Tennessee. Can't really take much out of that, though, when it's such a blowout victory. And to see Shakir be able to play as much as he did and be targeted as much as he did is a huge thing for this Bills offense going forward. Sean McDermott was asked about Cole Beasley, and it made sort of a comparison to Khalil Shakir after the game. That's the territory we're in. That's what he's bringing to this offense. They have not had a weapon like that out of the slot since Cole Beasley, and I think Shakir, if he stays healthy, can be a 1,000-yard type receiver for this offense.
Get your cold beer here at Consumers Beverages, where you'll find the largest selection of craft, specialty, import, and domestic beer. Consumers Beverages has the fastest empty container returns at all 18 locations. Visit consumersbeverages.com, Buffalo's beer store.
And Ryan, for all the good that the Bills accomplished in this game, certainly going across the country, tough place to play, all of that, it wasn't a perfect showing, right, by any means. And probably the biggest problem for this team coming out of this game was the penalties. And it's an issue that has come up before at times this season for this team. I think the final tally, you have it there, was 13 for the Bills. Maybe the only silver lining in that is that Seattle was awfully close in in penalties as well. I believe it was 11 for them, but you're looking at a combined 24 in the game, most in the NFL this season. What are you seeing here, Ryan, that is making this a continual issue for this team?
Yeah, and what I see is a lack of attention to detail by veterans, and that's a concern for this Bills team, and I'm sure it's something that Sean McDermott's going to really, use a sledgehammer figuratively against them this week because, when you talk to veterans after a game and they bring up a negative like the penalties, that means it's going to be an issue. That means it's probably already been addressed. And one thing that David Edwards, the left guard, said, that they have to clean it up because it's going to cost them a game eventually. And I'll start on offense. Deion Dawkins and Spencer Brown had 14 combined penalties this year. They had 13 all last year. There's no reason for these guys to have false starts. They know Josh Allen's snap count. They know his cadence. They know his dummy calls. So, and on defense, I don't think they have as big a problem on penalties. You're going to get pass interference. You're going to get illegal contact. But if I'm Sean McDermott, I know he won't do this. If a guy gets a penalty, take him off the field. I don't want to see him.
Yeah.
Get out of here. And, and maybe that'll send a message. They're not going to do that because you're not going to take your left tackle off the field. But it does, penalties come and go. But now this is twice in the last 3 weeks where they've been an issue.
Yeah, no question. And, McDermott preaches all the time about the pre-snap variety, right? Mm-hmm. The false start, the offside, and how those are inexcusable. But they continue to be, they continue to happen. And to your point, they are kind of being excused. You're in a tough spot. You aren't benching Spencer Brown. You aren't benching Deion Dawkins. You got no depth as it is at offensive tackle. Now, if Ed Oliver jumps offside, maybe you do pull him for the next series, right? Maybe that does send enough of a message since you do rotate along the defensive line as much as you do. I think there's a lot of different issues at play here, right? I mean, you watch any NFL game, penalties are a problem. The number of flags. It just so happens that, they've impacted the Bills here a lot over the last 3 weeks. But I agree with you wholeheartedly, against a better opponent, and they're coming on the schedule, right? You've got the Chiefs soon enough. You've got the 49ers coming out of the bye. There are going to be games where you can't afford to do that. The fact that they were able to drive 90 yards on the first possession yesterday offensively, despite 3 penalties, is borderline remarkable. I mean, usually you just don't overcome that many mistakes. I guess it does speak well to the game plan that Joe Brady had and the execution of that game plan when they weren't being flagged. But no question about it. You want to see that minimized as much as possible. And they're going to have penalties. They're not going to go through entire games with no flags. They maybe have done that once this year, or it was a 1 penalty game. I know they had one very good game in this regard, but you've got to cut that number 13. I mean, what's an acceptable number? You want to get it down to 5 or 6, 4, 5 or 6, somewhere in that range. So you're looking at about halving it.
Yeah, and you look at Kansas City, they have 11 fewer penalties than the Bills this year. They have 51. They haven't had double-digit penalties in a game. So, and the effort stuff, as you said, that happens. This is a physical game. It's an emotional game where sometimes you get beat. You're going to, grab a guy's jersey to save a touchdown. But the pre-snap stuff, they had to delay a game yesterday. This is a 7th-year quarterback who should not be having to delay a game. So I think it's something worth monitoring. Vaughn got up to a good start. Now he's back from suspension on Monday, expected to play Sunday against Miami. Let's start off with this one. Expectations for a 35-year-old player who hasn't played in a month.
Well, I think at the start they're going to be pretty low. I would expect his snap count will be fairly low. If it were more than 20, I'd be surprised. I think, though, maybe, if you want to take the glass half full view of this, maybe he's fresh, right? I mean, he's had a month off here. We know we saw him in the facility toward the tail end of last week. I think that's the first time I had seen him around the building. Maybe it was the Thursday or Friday of last week. He was in there. So I don't think it has to be the worst thing for Von Miller. I mean, listen, they're getting good production, right, from their defensive line. I think A.J. Epinesa, I think Greg Rousseau have really started to come on lately. I know you've spent some time talking with both of those guys recently. I thought Rousseau, even though he didn't finish with a sack yesterday, had another strong game. So my expectations for Von Miller are basically kind of where they were. They were at the floor coming into the season, right, based on last year. And then the first 3 games, I think, raised them a little bit, 1 sack each in those first 3 games. So you want Von Miller for the Kansas City game. You want him for the San Francisco game. You want him to make impact plays in those games. I don't think you, frankly, need him week in, week out to play a great deal of snaps. It's still, to me, Ryan, almost at the point where anything that you get from Von Miller is sort of a bonus.
And you remember that Baltimore game, he really played very little.
Limited, 9 snaps. It was less than 10.
So now pretty much 5 games of no activity. And just real quick for the listeners, because I clarified this with the league because I thought it was odd to see Von in the locker room last week, but there's a rule that for this kind of suspension, you're allowed back in the facility halfway through the suspension.
Okay.
And so he was around in the locker room. I'm sure he'll address the media at some point this week, but I think you used a good word there. I'm still in the bonus stage with Von Miller. You're getting Rousseau, AJ Epenesa's played well, Smoot's played well, and now if you're Bobby Babbage and Marcus West, the D-line coach, work Von in on third downs. Maybe work him in on a drive start, a 1st and 10, where a team may be more willing to pass, and get him re-cranked back up, so to speak. So, with this pass rush, I'm waiting for Greg Rousseau to have that 2.5 sack game because he's doing everything else right. And you mentioned him in the first segment. He took over the game early yesterday, but maybe getting Von back will just create that little bit of an opening for Greg to take advantage.
Yeah, I'm with you there. The good news for the Bills is that they can sort of seamlessly make this transition to bringing Von back. And the reason they can do that, they put Dwayne Carter on injured reserve last week, did not fill that roster spot with a signing to the 53. So Miller gets activated, and they don't really have to juggle too much right now. We saw them call up Ilianku from the practice squad. He's a defensive tackle. So maybe you wonder, who does Von cut into in terms of playing time? So you've got Javon Solomon, the rookie, who had another sack yesterday, sort of a garbage time sack. Casey Toohill, who's a veteran. So you're pretty heavy, at defensive end with 6 at the position now with Von coming back. So maybe they do have to make some sort of a move there if they want to add to the defensive tackle. But if they don't want to, they can bring him in. They don't have to cut anybody. It can be a pretty simple transition. And as I said before, and you sort of echoed, whatever they get from him at this point is a bonus. What you really want is to see Von Miller at his peak, whatever that looks like in January. And Ryan, at 6-2 at the midway point, I guess the midway point would be at halftime, right, of the Miami game now on a 17-game schedule. We're pretty close to the midway point, though. We know that the Bills have a stranglehold on the AFC East. The results went their way yesterday with the Jets and the Dolphins losing. But let's look at the conference as a whole here, because, and this is something that you addressed in your column. You've got the Chiefs sitting there undefeated. They don't look like world beaters, particularly on offense at all times. But they keep finding a way to win. That's the story with Patrick Mahomes, as it used to be with Tom Brady. He just finds a way. Big loss for Baltimore yesterday in terms of seeding for where the Bills are right now, and the Ravens and the Texans do find a way to win. Again, didn't look dominant in doing so, and potentially a major injury there. We're sort of awaiting word on an old friend in Stephon Diggs. What did you think of the results in the conference yesterday, and where the Bills sort of fit into that race now?
Yeah, let's rank these teams in a level of trust. I trust the Chiefs for the reasons you just said. I trust the Bills because of Josh Allen and he's not turning it over. Baltimore, to me, you don't lose at Cleveland.
Yeah.
If you're going to be, because if you're going to be a Super Bowl contender and you want the playoffs to come through your stadium, you don't lose to Jameis Winston. You don't lose to Ken Dorsey in his first game calling back plays. But that's been an MO of the Ravens through the years, is they give games away, and that cost them. Houston, I wasn't impressed. Diggs is now out. Collins is still out with the hamstring that he hurt against the Bills. And C.J. Stroud has not been the rookie version of C.J. Stroud the last couple weeks. Green Bay didn't play well. They had to struggle against Indianapolis to win. So they play at the Jets on Thursday night. So I think the Bills, the tie breaks do not work their way.
No,
Head-to-head.
yeah,
That's
no,
the big
not
thing.
with the head-to-heads to Houston and to Baltimore, you've obviously got to stay at least a game ahead of them. I'm not ruling out a run at the 1 seed. Obviously, having a head-to-head against Kansas City is huge with what that, could potentially mean. Obviously, they'll need to get some help somewhere else from somebody on the Chiefs' schedule, and that doesn't look like it's coming soon. You mentioned earlier today when we were talking off the air that I think the next 2 for the Chiefs are the Bucks, and who is the other one?
Broncos.
Broncos, right. Okay, so, Broncos sitting there with 5 wins, but I don't know that anybody's looking at them as a serious contender in the AFC. So I think it's still there for the Bills in terms of this conference race. These next 2 are obviously big. We know what, a win over Miami means in terms of the division. The Colts, are still alive in the AFC race, but I feel like there's starting to be some separation in terms of, the legitimate contenders in the conference. I think certainly the Bills are on that list, and you look now with 3 straight wins and 1 in really dominant fashion on the road at a tough place to play. I think there's a lot of positives that the Bills are going to be heading into Miami Week 4, and we all know what Miami Week means in this rivalry with the Dolphins and what Josh Allen has done against them. So, Ryan, you and I have gotten about 45 minutes of sleep on a Detroit airport floor. I think we need to wrap this up before we get any more delirious than we already have been. What do you say?
Well, I tell you what, you have not lived until you've seen Elliot Skurski run across a moving walkway and get timed by his father. So, but that was the highlight.
Yes, yeah, he was trying to break 45 seconds. He didn't quite do it. There was some traffic, but anyway, people are probably wondering what we're even talking about right now. So with that, we're gonna wrap it up. He's Ryan O'Halloran. I am Jay Skurski, I believe. We will be back next Monday following the Miami Dolphins visit to Highmark Stadium for the next episode of the Further Review podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in at BuffaloNews.com.
Consumers Beverages, Buffalo's beer stores since 1948. Find out what our latest deals are by visiting consumersbeverages.com.